So I more than anyone know that romantasy fans tend to be a little bit unhinged when you kind of question the books that they really enjoy. A Court of Thorns and Roses tends to be one of the most like revered in the romantasy genre as a book that just it has it all. It has everything you could ever want. There are so many things in this that just kind of make my head scratch, and it genuinely makes me feel that a lot of the books published these days aren't necessarily like masterworks of fiction or literature. They are just, they have a gimmick that kind of appeals to certain people. They're usually touted as masterful storytellings, when I firmly believe there is a difference between storytelling and being a good author. And being a good author who's a good storyteller is super rare, and that's when you get like masterpieces. But usually you have a good writer who doesn't really put a very good story, or a pretty good story that's not written very well. And in the case of A Court of Thorns and Roses, I would say that it's like a good author that's not very good at storytelling. Just for the sake of my own sanity here, I'm going to complain about this, and I'm going to complain about it from start to finish, and then I'm going to give my personal gripes about what I don't necessarily like about the story. So if you hate this book, you'll probably like this video. But if you genuinely like this book, just hear me out on this. Just let me just offer an olive branch. I like romantasy. I like reading it. It's sometimes they're really good. In the case of this book, I just don't, it doesn't really connect with me, and I never read any of the other books, but it was one of those things where everyone was so hyped about it that I feel like it didn't live up to my expectations. But even then, if my expectations were on the ground, I would still be a little disappointed. The book opens with the protagonist, Feyre, and she's like this starving 19-year-old girl, and she's hunting to provide for her family, who are basically, they're all just fucking useless. That's really what they are. They don't help at all, mostly. And her father's kind of like a loser, blah, blah, blah. Her life is terrible. Everything sucks. Okay. So she's hunting out in the woods. Just for the record, if I pronounce the names wrong, don't come after me. I'm a fast reader. I'm not a good talker, if that makes sense. She's going through the woods, and she encounters this wolf eating a deer or some shit. And she kills the wolf, and the wolf doesn't really appear to try to leave. It just kind of like stares at her, and she kills it, and she skins it, and she sells it at the market, and blah, blah, blah. The wolf turns out to actually be a Feyre, or whatever the hell they call it. This is really confusing because I pronounce Feyre the same as I pronounce fairies, like the Feyre. I call them Feyre. I'm a little illiterate. One night, the door just bursts open, and in comes this massive like monster. It's like fangs, and it looks kind of like a bear, and it's like, grr, who killed my friend? And of course, Feyre, being completely selfless in like a very weird way, she just kind of like steps up to this monster, and she's like, it was me, I killed him. And the monster kind of explains that there's a treaty between the Feyre and the human, whatever, and that because she killed them, she killed one of theirs, they have to kill one of theirs. And that kind of makes sense, right? It's like blood for blood, whatever the hell. I'm fine with that, but then the plot just takes like a sharp turn. And until you know what happens later in the book, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it seems like it's straight up just bull hockey, like nonsense. Because instead of killing her, the monster specifically offers her a opportunity. He specifically says, Feyworld must claim your life in some way for the life you took from it. So as a representative of the immortal realm, I can either gut you like a swine, or you can cross the wall and live out the remainder of your days in Feyworld. To me, this doesn't make any sense. To me, just like, okay, not knowing what I know now at the end of the book, this doesn't make any sense just because she has killed one of theirs. He's like, okay, I have to kill one of yours. And she's like, okay, kill me. And he's like, oh, well, you actually, you can come live with me in the fucking immortal Fey realm forever. A lot of these romance books do this thing where it's like this super unlikely scenario of a super rich billionaire, like handsome motherfucker just coming in out of nowhere and being like, hey, your life sucks. Come live with me, and I'll take care of all your worries. I would say that that's like a woman fantasy, but I feel like that's a fantasy of most people, is that like some rich billionaire person will come into your life and be like, hey, let me take care of you. Sure, whatever. But it's just so weird that it would, it's like, I'm going to kill you. And then it's like, well, actually, you can come live with me. And of course she agrees, whatever. Okay, so Feyre gets transported to the Fey realm by this bear, who actually turns out to be this, oh, you'll never guess it. He's a dashingly handsome High Lord fairy or whatever. and he specifically just wants her to keep her there. He says she can leave whenever she wants. She just can't go across the wall. She can stay within the borders of his like manor or whatever. Blah blah blah. Everybody she encounters is pretty much just gorgeous. Most of the guys anyway are just like, oh my god, they're all so broad-shouldered and muscular and like hot, and you're just like, wow. There comes a point where Feyre she's starving. She's been starving for a long time. And this is kind of like a driving force behind her character. Is like, well, you never know what it was like to be starving, to be hungry, and to never know when you're going to get your next meal, to what she says to the High Lords or whatever. And they're just kind of like, But Feyre has like two concerns at this point in the book, and it's mainly her family. She wants to ensure they're well kept for, and now that she's gone, because she was the only one doing anything in the family. She was the only one hunting and providing for them. And there's a point where she kind of says that any money she gets, her sisters just instantly spend. They instantly spend the money. And this is so counterintuitive. You learn why later in the book, but it genuinely doesn't make any sense that why they keep spending it. As like a whole, Feyre's like complaints seem pretty valid because she's the sole provider for the family. She made a promise to her mother to like always take care of them and blah, blah, blah. And her father's pretty much useless. The Feyre Lord's name is Tamlin. Okay. And at this point, Feyre has a very specific set of beliefs about the Fae. Okay. She believes that they can never tell a lie, and that their food is like poison or some shit, and it'll enslave them or whatever. So Feyre is starving, right? And she's taken to an immediate like lavish feast. And this is, you've seen like memes pop up about this. I'm sure you have at some point. If you browse book talk or whatever, there's a meme where it's like, I'm sitting in my gown and this like handsome guy offers me food and I say, fuck you, even though I'm starving to death. And it's like, she's actively starving to death and she's refusing food, which genuinely doesn't make sense because at this point she's kind of resigned herself to like death, right? She already agreed to die, but now she's like refusing to eat, which will kill her. And it just doesn't make any sense for her to keep being this like antagonistic towards them. But people will say, oh, you know, she has this deep sowed hatred for fays. Whatever. She hates fairies. I get it. I might say fae and fairy. I'm sorry. I can't help it. Tamlin explains to her while they're at this dinner that her family is being cared for, that she doesn't have to worry about it, and that he wouldn't be so cruel to like take their only source of like food and all this away from them. At this point, she thinks he can't lie, so she believes him when he says that. But throughout most of the book, she's still concerned about this and still wants to go back to her family to help them. And you got to remember, she thinks that this guy can't lie to her. She thinks. But when he says this, she's just like, sure, whatever. And it's so confusing. So she encounters two fays, right? The High Lord Tammin and his sort of emissary, who's Lucian. And Lucian's got, she learns that they have these masks on their face, like this mask on their face. And it's a curse. And they can't take it off no matter what. So they have like the golden mask, and then like the Lucian guy has like a fox mask or something. And you kind of get the idea that like, okay, Lucian's kind of like, he's a quick-lipped, like snarky little guy, but he doesn't like humans at all, right? He hates humans. Whereas Tamlin seems to be more chill about it, and he generally just comes off as kind of like a nice guy, albeit a bit like overbearing and kind of like weird in like an obsessive kind of way. And this part of the book is kind of where I start to like zone out a little bit, because the book hinges upon how beautiful the Fae are, like how handsome they are, how amazing they are, how Feyre is like eating more, and how she's filling out more, and she's becoming less starved and like gaunt. They're always stuck in these weird conversations that are just straight up exposition. It's just explaining. I'm not getting a whole sense of romance from this, is kind of my feeling. I don't understand how being trapped inside the walls with two like really hot guys is kind of like a terrible thing. And also that you're totally protected, you have all this food and all this stuff, and you have the freedom to do pretty much whatever you want outside of leaving. It's kind of like this it's the forced proximity trope, and I don't really vibe with that too much when it's super unbelievable. And at this point in the book, I'm just kind of scratching my head like, okay, we're all just super hot, because usually she describes herself as like unappealing and like very bland, and you know, she doesn't really have a whole lot going for her. Like she hooked up with this guy named Isaac in like back in the day, and now she's just kind of like just like not that great. But everybody is telling her how attractive she is, right? You have these two golden god dudes who are just basically like ripped and they're all sexy, and they're giving her compliments, and she is still like, I don't really believe you. But it's like, dude, it's so hard to just like subtract this from the overall thing, because Feyre has to be attractive, because there's no way this story would work if she was genuinely unappealing on any level, right? Because the main driving force is that Tamlin is going to fall in love with her. And why is he falling in love with her? Well, she killed his friend, and she's attractive. That's pretty much it. So through on the story, you kind of learn that there's these magical creatures that have been like kind of spreading throughout the land, and they're not supposed to be there, right? They're not supposed to be there. Tamlin, usually because he's a High Lord, he has the capacity to kill these creatures. So he goes out and he kills them, and he watches his border and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the book, and I mean a lot of the book, is dinners. It is dinners, dates. That's pretty much all that it is. As a matter of fact, the amount of times in this book that Feyre has dinner or wakes up is absurd to me. I know that this is kind of like this is pretty standard sometimes, but almost every chapter, I want to say almost every chapter, starts with Feyre waking up. That's how these chapters start. And it almost kind of feels lazy that we're just going through every day with Feyre while she's surrounded by hot billionaires, and they all kind of want a part of her, and it's just absurd. She learns about the Blight, which is the magical thing that is plaguing all of Feyland, and it kind of limits their powers. Tamlin's powers are limited, but he's still kind of strong, and he can transform. Lucien, I don't even know if Lucien has powers outside of healing, but he's just kind of like there. Feyre is still distrusting of everyone. At about like 90 pages in, she still doesn't believe anyone, even though she knows they told her that she's not going to be killed, that she can leave whenever she wants, whatever. They tell her this, and this is when she still believes that they can't lie. So why is she so defensive? It genuinely doesn't make sense. She steals a knife at dinner, and she's always prepared that someone's going to come and kill her. She's gonna have to kill them. This book is kind of like a vacation for her, as opposed to like anything bad. At some point, you kind of get this implication that maybe Lucien and Feyre might be like doing a little bit of stuff, but really they're not. He just kind of takes her along for hunting. And while Feyre is hunting, that's when we kind of learn that Feyre's development as a character has changed, because she hunted specifically to ensure that her family was fed. And now that she has like this plenty of food and all this stuff, Feyre doesn't really see the point in hunting anymore. She's kind of like over it, right? These are skills that she specifically had to hone in order to survive. Every time he takes her along, she just kind of doesn't really want to participate. Now to circle back, okay, another encounter happens where Feyre once more is like, I need to take care of my family. Okay, on page 62, Tamlin says this: your family is alive and well cared for. You think so low of Feyre's that you believe I'd take their only source of income and nourishment and not replace it. And then Feyre says, you swear it. Even if fairies couldn't lie, I had to hear it. On everything that I am and possess. On page 62, Feyre has an encounter with Tamlin where he specifically tells her that her family is cared for and everything's fine. On page 98, Tamlin side-eyed me long. You're not giving up on them. Living in luxury, stuffing myself with food, how is that not? They are cared for. They are fed and comfortable. Fed and comfortable. If he couldn't lie, it was true. Then it was beyond anything I'd ever dared hope for. Then my vow to my mother was fulfilled. We've said the same thing. I don't know if maybe Sarah forgot that she wrote the other part, but this encounter already happened. This conversation literally happened. They already talked about this. But now she's like, oh, the deed is fulfilled. But on page 62, all that she has to say about that is, why didn't you tell me when we left the cottage? And then on page 98, she's like, well, then, okay, we're good. My promise is fulfilled. People tout this as like really good storytelling, but it's very repetitive. It's very repetitive because Feyre, okay, another big point in Feyre's character is the fact that she is illiterate. You'll be surprised how much the illiteracy comes up. Feyre being illiterate is quite literally a plot device, which is kind of funny. And then, of course, Tamlin finds out that she is illiterate, and he offers to help her. He wants to help her learn how to write so that she can send letters to her family. And Feyre, still at this point, like 100 pages in, she's like, fuck you, I don't need your help. And it genuinely doesn't make any sense. So Tamlin killed the weird monster that was wandering through the forest, and then Feyre and Tamlin have this little moment where she heals his hand, or she like wraps it in bandages, and he's kind of like impressed, and he's like, whoa, where'd you learn to do this? And she's just like, survival. And okay, I'm all for scenes where, like, you know, we're tending to our loved ones or whatever, but this one just seems so weird to me. Like, it doesn't feel very organic that Feyre up until this point was like, fuck you, fuck everything you stand for. And then she's like, oh, your hand is hurt and you're like so muscular and I can see your like your pecs, dude. Do you need some help? Like, I'm okay, whatever. Feyre has been given a very, very, very like boring hobby. Okay, Feyre's hobby is painting, and this has been alluded to one time in the very beginning of the book. One time that she really likes painting, and this painting subplot pisses me off to no end because there is no point in this painting shit, and it genuinely feels like you took like you had like a dartboard and you just threw it at like a random hobby to give Feyre. Because if she has spent her whole life like honing herself to become a warrior, a hunter, or whatever in order to provide for her family, I don't really feel like painting would make sense when you're poor and you live in a little cottage and you have like all you have to do is always worrying about where the next food is coming from. I don't think painting would be considered a hobby. I genuinely think it would have made more sense if her hobby was just hunting or gathering or doing something that provided for her family, and she truly had like no like hobbies outside of that. And then through Tamlin, she like develops a new hobby, but instead she's just like, oh, I've always wanted to paint. And then we get this fucking painting subplot. The painting subplot is just kind of boring. It's indifferent. I don't really care about it. Blah, blah, blah. At some point, Lucien kind of gives Feyre some information about this little thing that she can capture called a surreal, which is this thing that if you capture it, it has to answer your questions. It's kind of like, oh, I can't remember the book. I think it was like Name of the Wind, where it's like it's a creature that can give you the answers to like they're like omnipotent, but they kind of fuck with you like in a weird way. So she goes into the woods in order to find this thing and capture it so that she can ask some questions, which she does. She asks it questions. And her questions aren't necessarily like all that interesting, okay? Because she asks it if Tamlin is a High Lord. Because I'm pretty sure at multiple points in this story, Feyre has been given the information that Tamlin is pretty much a High Lord. Because Lucien at multiple points explains that Tamlin, due to being a High Fae, has all of these extra abilities that, you know, certain people don't have. And that he can kill the weird monsters and other people can't. And blah, 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 like all this stuff. But then, one of the main questions she wants to ask is Tamlin a High Lord? And it's like, I don't think, is that really a question? Because he has a mansion, he has servants, he's got magical powers. Are we really so confused that Tamlin is a High Lord that we need to ask the expositionary device of the creature that can tell us anything? Is this guy the High Lord? Like, yes, he is. It's so obvious. Now, if we wanted to, we could say this is because Feyre is illiterate. And if we're taking the illiterate claim at face value, Feyre should be pretty dumb. And if one of the main markers of your main character is that she's dumb, I just don't like it. So Feyre kind of asks like an important question. She asks where the blight came from. The thing doesn't really answer her. It just kind of like gives her this long spiel about how there's this other guy who's like the king and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, one of his commanders betrayed him. And that is actually why they call them the Deceiver. And before he has a chance to finish, she is attacked. She's attacked by the Naga. And Feyre, being Feyre, she kind of just she frees the little monster thing. The monster thing escapes, and then she kind of runs while like trying to fight off these things. And if you were surprised, she gets saved by Tamlin. Tamlin saves her in his wolf form. He saves her. He's super impressed. Blah blah blah. She has another bath, and finally, on page 141 is when she learns that the fairies can lie. Fairies can lie. We're finally learning this. They don't really do themselves any justice because Lucian kind of explains like, we consider lying an art. Like, we're really good at lying. It's actually probably the only way that we got ancient humans to like help us out. Tamlin, again, like Feyre is still circling around this like, Tamlin's a high lord. Like we haven't known that since like the very beginning of when she like encountered this guy, that he's like a high lord. We know that. We know he's the high lord. And then, they're just kind of impressed, blah, blah, blah. This is kind of where Tamlin explains what he did to the family, which is he altered their memories so that they could forget what happened. And then he implied that like she went off with her like sick aunt or something, and then they got a whole bunch of money and they're totally fine. And Tamlin's telling her like, your father would have definitely came after you if I hadn't done that. And Feyre's like, no, he wouldn't. My father's a bum. You don't know my father. He's a bum. Blah, blah, blah. And Tamlin also kind of gives this very vague, like, he warned them that if anything happened, they should immediately flee. So the implication is that the blight is going to spread to the humans, and there's going to be this big, horrible thing happening. And you're just like, whatever. I mean, Tamlin kind of offers to let Feyre pursue her dream of painting, because that's all that truly matters, right? And is painting. And Feyre's like, you should let me help work for it, or you should let me, do something so that I can pay you back for all this that you're helping me. And that doesn't make any sense. We're so far in the book. She has eaten so many meals. She spent so much time here for free. And this guy is filthy rich. He can do magic like that. And it's like, you really think he wants you to do chores around the house when he has servants? It just doesn't make any sense for Feyre to offer this. And this is kind of where like you get a little point where Feyre is starting to fall for Tamlin. This is more than just him being grotesquely attractive. He's just kind of being sweet to her. And she like makes this little snide remark, and dude, she kind of does Isaac. Like I feel a little bad for Isaac, right? Isaac's the first guy that she like slept with in the beginning of the book. And she says, Isaac had never made me smile like that. Isaac had never made me my breath catch just a little bit. Isaac had never made my breath catch just a little bit. That's a pretty bad sentence. But so now, okay, Feyre's simping. Feyre is 100% like she's down to clown with this guy. And again, we have another one of these. She wakes up again. She wakes up so much. And then this is where they come in with this wounded Feyre or whatever, whose wings have been taken off. Feyre kind of helps and like tries to like coax him and be like, hey, it's going to be okay, man. It's not going to be okay. He dies. And then we kind of get this like, oh man, dang, Tamlin just cares so much. And, Feyre's, they're so like sweet, and they're so sweet and forgiving. Oh, these beautiful Feyres, man. I don't know why. And then she like apologizes for what happened to their friend, which, by the way, what happened to the wolf, you learn later in the book. These guys have no reason to be fucking mad about this. None whatsoever. But they are still kind of angry about it, and it's so absurd. But she apologizes, blah, blah, blah. Each of Tamlin's movements was precise and efficient, his powerfully muscled legs eating up the earth as we wove between the towering trees. Okay. Okay. So they kind of just go into this kind of like hot spring, like this pool of water, and they spend a little time together. They learn a little bit more about each other. It's so beautiful. They learn about Lucian's tragic past and how he fell in love with some girl that was lowborn or some shit, and then she was killed in front of him, and blah blah blah. And then he's taking off his clothes button by button. It's like, Feyre explains, how her father lost all his wealth, how she started hunting at like 14, And then Lucian apologizes for not helping her during the attack of the Naga or whatever. Um, and that's kind of like a point where they're supposed to be like bonding and like rekindling their because Lucian and Feyre haven't really been like eye to eye. They're just kind of like they just kind of like snippy at each other. But this is supposed to be like her trusting him and him like vowing to like trust her. Blah blah blah. The next morning, we're back in the mornings. It's painting. She's painting. And then we gotta get this like it's this scene where it kind of explains Tamlin in a weird way. I'm just gonna read it because it's better. It's better. Uh, don't feel bad for one moment about doing what brings you joy. Why? Why do any of this? Because your human joy fascinates me, the way you experience things in your lifespan so wildly and deeply and all at once is entrancing. I'm drawn to it, even when I know I shouldn't be, even when I try not to be. Okay? I mean, maybe that sounds romantic to you. Um, to me, to me, it doesn't. It just sounds kind of weird. They've kind of been like alluding to how old uh, Tamlin is, and at minimum, he's like decades old, right? Probably hundreds of years. I wasn't paying too much attention during that, but he's super old, and she's 19. And then again, we have more of this. This is Feyre developing feelings for him. She's craving him. She's craving him being near her. Blah blah blah. Then he writes her a poem. Blah blah blah. He's just talking about his past. Blah blah blah. The ceremony is the next big like thing that happens. Blah blah blah. They dinner again. Drums. Feyre kind of slips out and does what she's not supposed to do, which is go towards this little festival or whatever the hell that's going on. And there she gets like almost like gangbanged. I mean, I'm assuming it's like a gangbang that's implied. She almost gets gangbanged by these like three fays. And she's like concerned, like, oh no, what's gonna happen? And then don't worry, because the most beautiful man she had ever seen, to quote, the most beautiful man she had ever seen, steps in and saves her. And he's kind of like a whisper. He's like a whisper in the night. He's super dark and brooding, and so whoa, it's so wow-y. So the whole festival thing, it's like I don't really know how to describe it, but the implication is that Tamlin would transform into like his beast form, and then he would like find a mate and just bang them like full on beast style. And that was kind of the reason they wanted Feyre to stay away from the festival, because they didn't want him to find her and bang her, because it would have been super rough, dude. She wouldn't have survived the ride, right? Basically. But then she like goes outside and she encounters Tamlin after he comes back from the festival, and he's like, he's just yeah, he's just like he's chomping at the bit here. And he's talking about how he searched for her and he was made to pick someone else, and Feyre's like jealous about this because she's like, I'm sure the Feyre that he banged was like super hot, which makes sense considering that Feyre are supposed to be beautiful and all this stuff. So again, we kind of get this point where Feyre is so attractive that Tamlin would rather bang her than like these literal like goddess shaped people, which is whatever, sure, fine, but it's a little suspension of disbelief. And then he just kind of he just bites her, and there's this weird like moment, and he's like, he really wants to fuck her. And this is 200 pages in, and we still haven't gotten any sex scene. It's all been like this slow buildup of him just like biting her and like wanting to be there, and she has like a warmth in her core and shit. Like, and that was like a leftover of the magic, right? Because Tamlin's he's still riding the beast high, and he wanted to bang her, but thankfully they don't. And guess what? Feyre awakes again, because she just wakes up constantly. They kind of joke about this encounter because like he bit her, but he didn't like really bite her that hard. But she's like, whatever. They have dinner again. They're just going back and forth. She's just staring at him. He's so hot. It's just he's so hot. Then we have kind of like a jealous moment where Tamlin learns about Isaac, poor old Isaac, and it's like, sure, okay. I mean, Tamlin's probably been banging some strange throughout his whole life too, but like, oh, we're getting jealous over Isaac, like the scrawny little half man from the poor village that that Fairy banged when she was like 18. Okay, whatever, dude. Um, and then Fairy doesn't lock her bedroom anymore because she kind of low key wants him to, like, get in there, but she also wants to help him, whatever that means. So Tamlin eventually lets Feyre see the Fey world for what it is. He gets a kiss from her or something like that. He kisses her eyes, and then she kisses his hand, and she can now see the Fey world for what it truly is. It's beautiful. She kind of describes how she thinks he would look without the mask. And then again, she wakes up. Again, she just keeps waking up. Every chapter is her waking up. She's surprised to see that the manor was full of a bunch of fairies, but she couldn't see them because Tamlin was using glamour on her, which is like a fancy way of saying cloaking, I guess. Blah blah blah. There was a head. There was a head in their garden. They find a head in the garden. It was a fairy, and it was left there as kind of like a joke by the Night Court. Oh my God, who's the Night Court? Whoever could be the Night Court Lord. Could it possibly be the dark, mysterious guy that saved her at the festival? I don't know, man. It's just so hard to tell. They have like this little party, and Feyre decides to drink some of the fairy wine, which supposedly can like enslave people, but she just gets super wasted, and she feels great. It's like the high. She's like, it's like doing meth for the first time. She's awesome. She's dancing around. She's having fun. Tamlin's dancing with her. They're all dancing. Everything's great. She's finally happy. And then finally, I think we get a little bit of a, yeah, he kisses her for the first time. And 230 pages, they get their first kiss. I didn't really feel a whole lot when they kissed. I was kind of over it. But it was the happiest moment in her life, which is very important. Again, we have lunch. Again, we're eating. Again, we're just eating. That's all that we're doing is we're eating with lunch. We wake up, we eat lunch. We wake up, we eat lunch. And then they get intruded during their lunch. And this is one of the first times Feyre has actually tried to dress like pretty nice. And they get intruded by, oh my God, it's the Night Lord. You'll never guess who it is. It's the guy she encountered during the festival. And his name is Riseland. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Riseland, again, the most beautiful man she had ever seen. Jot that down in your notebook. The most beautiful man she had ever seen. And he's kind of just like arguing with Tamlin and Lucien, and they're just kind of having this weird back and forth, whatever. Tamlin kind of tells her to leave. Riseland kind of like, he does this weird magic where he can like scrape into your brain and like pull out your memories and thoughts or whatever. And he he explains to Tamlin that like, oh man, Feyre's been dreaming of you between her thighs and like wanting you to bite her boob the way you bit her neck, and like really kind of like this awkward like just TMI scenario. I guess it's whatever. And then he forces them to bow to him in order to like spare her or whatever. And while doing this, Feyre gets asked her name, and she gives the name Claire Betterer, which is not her name. It's the name of some girl in her village that she knew. And this is really just like, this is kind of a part where I stopped and I was like scratching my head, like, why would Feyre give the wrong name? This is this confused me until like later on. It confused me because why would Feyre care about telling this guy her name? It really doesn't make any sense. He saved her life. Like, why wouldn't she give them fake name throughout the whole thing? Why would she ever tell them her name? Why doesn't she just lie about that too? Like, again, we're waking up again. We're laying in bed. I considered marking every point where Feyre wakes up in the bed, but again, it was so many that I actually ran out of the tags, so I just stopped doing it. And here we have kind of our return to the norm. This is the arc where the protagonist is going to go back home to see how things have changed, because Tamlin doesn't want Feyre to stay there. He wants her to leave. That is very important. He's telling her to leave. She has to go home, blah, blah, blah. Go home away from his protection and away from all of his like powers or whatever, because now that Riseland knows that she's there, it's going to cause problems. But again, when you learn the rest of the book, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Then here you get the title drop where who wants to be around someone covered in thorns, is where Feyre kind of implies that she is covered in thorns. And he's like, he's like, I love thorns. Thorns are fucking awesome. The first sex scene happens on page 246. I cannot express the sheer amount of disappointment I felt for this sex scene, because the internet had talked up this book as if it was like dirty. It was like super, super naughty. You don't know how fucking sexy this stuff is. And the sex scene is very boring. It is, I'm pretty sure it's standard missionary. It's, we moved together, unending, wild, and burning, and when I went over the edge next time, he roared and went with me. Like, dude, I waited 250 pages for a sex scene, and this is what I get. I don't know why. I'm just gonna say I just don't know why it's super popular, because that's not dirty. It's not crazy. Fay Wray leaves. Okay, she leaves. This next part is just kind of blah blah blah. Lucian is kind of against her leaving. Blah blah blah. She leaves. And then she goes home and she finds her family's kind of rich now or whatever. Everything's going good. She encounters Isaac, and dude, the way she insults Isaac is like human. He seemed so human with his gangly limbs, his simple handsomeness, but that smile he had moments before had transformed him into something more. Fay Wray has been spoiled by this gigantic, handsome, buff dude, and now she looks at Isaac and she's just like, this guy looks so normal, so unattractive, so generic. So the sister kind of like informs her like, hey, I remember everything that's happening. Then we kind of learned that, oh my God, Claire, the name that Fay Wray had given them, that person, their whole family got like slaughtered. Oh my God, and she's missing. And it's like, wow. So Fay Wray kind of puts it together like, oh my God, I did that. It's like, yes, you did that. I don't understand how this is so hard. And it's even implied that Tamlin knew about it, and he just kind of let it happen. He just was like, oh, well, as long as it's not Fay Wray that's getting fucking killed, I'm fine with it. Whatever, man. So she explains to her sister and her family everything that happened, and then she leaves, and she goes back to the manor with the intent of meeting Tamlin again. And when she gets there, the manor's been like ripped open, and there's like nobody there. She can't see anybody. And when she goes inside, she encounters the servant that's kind of been like her maid. The servant, Elias is kind of like, why are you back here? Tamlin told you to never come back, but she comes back anyway. Then we kind of get the backstory on the main villain, right? The main villain's name is Amarantha, which just, it makes me feel like maybe Sarah doesn't like someone named Samantha, but Amarantha was like this warlord fae or whatever. She had a sister named like Cynthia, and Cynthia fell in love with a human named Julian, and Julian betrayed her and tortured her and killed her. So then Amaranthia, Amar, I can call her Amar. Amar just like tortured him, and then she put him like in a state of eternal agony or whatever. And now she kind of just like hates humans, and she's been the one that's kind of been screwing everything up. And you kind of get like this, oh, and what she wanted Tamlin. Okay, she wanted Tamlin to be her like mate and like be her boyfriend or whatever because he's so desirable. Who could ever resist him? So she somehow, because she's not super powerful, she's just like really good at cunning and lying, and she manages to get like the 7 High Lords to bend to her will, and now they're all enslaved by her and blah blah blah. She gave Tamlin like this this deal, right? If Tamlin can find a human girl that is hated the Fae and killed them with hate in their heart, and then he could make that human love him and then get together with it would break the curse, and then by extension of that all the Fae whatever would be free. And that was the reason why the wolf guy was beyond the border, and that's who Fay Wray had killed. So Tamlin had been sending out people beyond the border that were his own people, right? His own Fae, because a prerequisite for the the binding oath or whatever was that a human had to kill a Feyre in with hatred in their heart. He had to make them love him. So they kind of explain like humans have killed them before, but usually it's like a man or an old woman, so it doesn't really count. And it's like, what do you mean it doesn't count? Is that not like one of the staples of the oath? But okay. So the fairy that Feyre killed in the very beginning was one of Tamlin's guys, his friend, who was going out there specifically to try and find a human girl that would kill him with hatred in her heart, that hated the Feyres, so that she could go live with him in the manor and eventually fall in love with him. And that is the whole plot of this book, was that Feyre killed that fairy, and then Tamlin was trying to break the curse by falling in love with her, getting her to fall in love with him. So the whole time when they're like guilting her over killing this guy, they're the ones that sent him. They are the ones that were okay with this because they knew it was the only way to break the curse and save everybody was to do this. And despite this, they continue to guilt her about it, which doesn't make a lick of sense. It really doesn't. So now we learn the time has passed and that Tamlin basically, since he didn't fall in love with and marry a human or whatever, he has to be Amar's boyfriend, boy toy basically. But Elise kind of points out that all that Faye had to do on that last day, on the last day that she left, Tamlin told her that he loved her. If she had said, I love you too, which she meant, kind of, right? Like she did love him, then the curse would have been broken. Now, there's the implication that maybe Feyre wasn't in love with him, but she was. She's absolutely in love with him. Now, clearly, it's probably not authentic love, but it is love, right? Given how far she's going for him after everything that's happened, you can assume that, okay, this is love. So Feyre could have ended the plot right then and there. You could have broken it, Elise snarled, those sharp teeth mere inches from my face. All you had to do was say that you loved him. Say that you loved him and mean it with your whole useless human heart, and his power would have been freed, you stupid, stupid girl. Like, is that really... Now you'll kind of understand what I mean when I say that the storytelling isn't super deep here, because we understand that Feyre is illiterate, okay? Feyre is illiterate, but she clearly is coherent enough to have, like, a conversation, so she should be witty enough to, like, put stuff together, which she is. She's not dumb, necessarily, but for some reason, this illiteracy is kind of used as a plot point. So she kind of gets her... She convinces her to take her to the mountain so that she can try and save Tamlin. And she fully is aware that this chick is probably going to kill her. Amar is probably going to kill her because Amar has no reason to entertain this. But she is told, like, hey, listen, you have to pay attention. Pay attention to what is being said and everything will work out. And so you're kind of incentivized as a reader to pay close attention to the dialogue that is being exchanged. But if I told you that the big plot twist is two single lines of dialogue, would you believe me? Would you believe that the key to the story is 2 lines of dialogue? Blah blah blah. She goes in there. She's captured by the princess of evil, and Feyre is basically just like, let him go. I love him. Blah blah blah. We're kind of introduced to the fact that, oh, Amara thought she killed you, and then Feyre kind of turns and sees the rotting, tortured corpse of Claire Bedon or whatever. The girl that Feyre said was her got her whole family killed, and then she was taken beneath the mountain by Amar and tortured until she was dead. And the entire time, nobody said anything, including Tamlin, Rysland, Lucian. Nobody said anything because they were trying to protect Feyre from this same fate. And then Feyre just walks in like, hey, it's me. Like, okay, she literally tortured this poor girl forever, and Feyre's just like, dang. Anyway, like, that is 100% her fault. Feyre at this point is not a good character. Just for the record, like, moral scaling, she's a horrible person. Amara has decided that she's going to make a bargain with Feyre, and Feyre's been told that, like, hey, whatever you do, don't make deals with High Lords or whatever, because they always, like, lie. They're always very sneaky in the way they do their dealings or whatever. The Lord says, like, okay, if you can complete 3 tasks of my choosing, then I will set Tamlin free and I'll release his power. And I'll release everybody's power. And everything will be great. And Amar adds an addition to the challenges, and she's like, you can complete the tasks, or if you can answer a riddle, then then I'll immediately free everybody. Okay. And obviously Feyre kind of agrees to this. And then Feyre gets the shit kicked out of her. They all just beat her up, and then they throw her in a cell. And then she wakes up again because she just got beaten up. This is kind of a point where Lucien reveals he has healing magic, and he kind of heals her because her nose is broken. Blah, blah, blah. She is kind of dozing off. And then Rysland is kind of like confronted about this because Amar is like, hey, I thought you said that the girl that I tortured nonstop was the girl that you saw at the estate. And Rysland's just kind of like, meh, all humans look alike to me, but it's very obvious that he's like taken a liking to Feyre. Once again, they ask her name, and she gives it eventually, which is like, if the whole point was to spare her family, then this just killed her family. This just doomed her family by telling them her name. But they should have already known her name, but whatever. I mean, I'm just going to move past it. So at this point, she has kind of doomed her family. That's what I'm getting from this. She's doomed her family, and for the record, this part of the book is 3 months long. So if Amar is as evil and conniving as we are led to believe, she already killed Claire's entire family. Why wouldn't she kill Feyre's family too? She just doesn't. Now, she is told the riddle. And I'm going to say the riddle just so that you can understand it. When I was reading this for the first time, I immediately guessed the answer to the riddle. The reason Feyre is kind of implied to not understand the riddle is because she's illiterate. But let's clarify. Illiterate doesn't mean you don't know the meaning of words and you can't communicate or like form coherent thoughts. It means that you can't write. You can't write and read, right? You could still understand. You can still understand words that are being spoken to you. And given the conversations we've had thus far, Feyre should have been able to figure out this riddle pretty early on. Okay, here's the riddle. There are those who seek a lifetime, but we never meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned, I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. What do you think that riddle means? If the answer was a thing, can you think of what it means? Those who would seek me a lifetime, but we never meet. And those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. And Feyre is just like, I'm illiterate. And they keep saying, like, at many points in the book, they just kind of point out, like, oh, some illiterate human. Like, that just makes Feyre the stupidest person imaginable. If you know the answer to the riddle, stay till the end. See if you're right. Lock it in. Lock in your answers. She gets her first challenge, which is to defeat a worm. A big old worm. Which she manages to defeat, but it, like, breaks her arm, and it's like her arm's like bleeding, and she's like almost, it's like her arm's like fucked up, but she manages to kill it. Feyre's arm has gotten really bad. Feyre's arm is like rotting. She's got the beginnings of like an infection. She's for sure going to die from an infection, which kind of seems like counterintuitive, but we have to have this next scene in order for the rest of the book to happen. So Rysland comes in. Rysland's like he's like the tall, dark Lord of the Night, High Lord, and he's the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. He offers to heal her arm in return for her spending 2 weeks at his manor every month. She talks him down to a week. He heals her arm, and her arm sprouts this tattoo with like an eye on it, and that's kind of like her link to Rysland. And then she's sort of just doing all this weird stuff. She's being forced to clean, all this crap, blah blah blah. And then Feyre is kind of forced to be Rysland's like date to like balls, which is super weird. So they what they do is they paint her naked body so that Rysland can tell if anyone's touched her. And then they go up to the little dance area where all the Feyrays are partying, and Rysland gives her this cup of like Feyray wine, and the wine acts kind of like there's no way around it. The wine is like a date rape drug. That's what it is. And Feyray just kind of like zones out while she's with the wine, and what Rysland just kind of like treats her kind of like as a stripper during this sequence where he like where he just has her like grind on him all night, and then she throws up and she can't, and then when she's done throwing up, he makes her keep grinding on him again, all specifically so that Tamlin can watch his human lover grind on him. And it's like, okay, sure. Feyray and Lucian have like a spat where because he's like, why didn't you wait for me to heal you? And she's like, I was gonna die, which technically is true. The sequence just continues every night where Feyray is just like forced to dance on Rysland, and then blah blah blah. And then Rysland has to kill like a traitor, and he doesn't really seem too happy about it. And it's kind of implied that he might have been the one that was helping the traitor. And like, as if we couldn't guess that the guy that's been kind of subtly helping Feyray might actually be a good guy. Now the second task comes along, and this one is just playing into the fact that she's illiterate, because there's like something written and she has to pick the correct lever for the answer. And if she doesn't pick correctly, she's going to die, and then Lucian's going to get like squished to death. And she doesn't know which one to pick because she can't read, which is a major plot point. And then when she goes to reach for 2, there's 3 levels. She reaches for the second one, and pain shoots up in her tattooed arm. And she's like, oh, not that one. She goes to reach for the first one. It's like pain. She's like, oh. And then eventually she picks the correct lever because Rysland has been helping her. Who would have thought? His voice is talking to her in her head, and he's like helping her through the challenges. Okay. And then more dancing, and the weird stuff happens. Randomly in the middle of the dance, like Tamlin finds her, and they both almost have sex, and then Rysland like cuts them off, and he's like, what are you guys doing? And then Rysland kind of like forces himself on Faye for a little bit, and it's all because Amar was right behind. She opens the door and she sees them, and she just thinks like, oh, Rysland's trying to bang a human, and humans are so lecherous, whatever. The implication is that if Tamlin was caught banging her, they both would have been killed. So Rysland actually forced himself on her to help her. She just doesn't know that. Rysland and Faye have kind of like their own moment, and Rysland is like the kind of like, I guess, the mistress of Amar, where he just like he helps her in bed, I guess. And they have like this weird moment where they're talking, and it's kind of implied that like, oh, he's actually a good guy, as if we couldn't already tell. He literally helped her not die, and she's still questioning him, but whatever. The final task is given, and there's 3 Fays that are hooded. Feyray loses all of her grace as a protagonist, to the point where Feyray is not a good person. So Amar brings out 3 fairies. They all have hoods on their heads, 2 men and 1 woman. And she explains like, oh, they're innocent, by the way. They're totally innocent, and you have to stab each and every one of them in the heart in order for your final trial to be completed. So Feyray is forced to look each one in the eyes as she stabs them in the heart, and they beg for their lives. And they are innocent, and she is doing this because she's like, oh, it's for the greater good. This is the only way. Rysland's telling her she has to do it. Feyray is killing innocent fairies. To me, this isn't like a morally great protagonist. This is just a bad person. This just doesn't make sense to put your character in this like position for me. Because no matter what, she is the bad guy. It doesn't matter why she's doing it. She is killing innocent people. He's begging, blah, blah, blah. Then she gets to the third one. She gets to the third one, and the hood is pulled off to reveal, oh my God, it's actually Tamlin. And she has to stab Tamlin in the heart. And this is kind of when Feyray remembers 2 lines of dialogue that are very crucial. For someone with a heart of stone, though you have a heart of stone. She remembers these 2 lines of dialogue from earlier in the book and realizes that Tamlin actually literally has a heart made of stone. And so she stabs him in the chest, and he's fine. He's fine. Hurrah! Victory! Everybody won! Hooray! And then Amar is not happy about it. She's flipping out. She slams Faye into the ground with magic. And then Amar's like, Technically, I didn't say when I would free you, so ha ha ha. I didn't technically say when I would free you, so I'll free you whenever I want. And she's goading Feyre to tell her, admit that you don't love him, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, Feyre's pretty much dying at this point. She is being crushed into the ground. She's dying. And here is where Feyre solves the riddle. The answer to Amara's riddle is love. And I don't think that Feyre being illiterate should have made it that hard to understand. Even when I read that for the first time, I was like, okay, that sounds like a love riddle, because scorned or whatever made me think of like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and that's usually relating to like love. So I was like, okay, well, this is probably about love. It was. Okay, and then Feyre's spine snaps. But now the magic has been lifted instantly, because Amar had said that if she solves the riddle, the curse would be lifted instantaneously. So the curse is lifted instantaneously. Tamlin transforms into beast mode or whatever and kills her. He kills Amar. All of the Fey Lords give Feyre a drop of their golden magic, and she awakes a Fey. She's born a Fey. Feyre as a main character, I don't like her, because a lot of her dialogue and interactions, they're all just kind of, she's just kind of being snippy for no reason, and I don't really get the sense that she like genuinely hates fairies or whatever. She's just kind of like, she's just moving the plot forward with her like, I hate you. But there's also points where like the dialogue contradicts itself. Like at earlier points, it's implied that her family's taken care of, everything should be fine. She fully believes that the fairies can't lie to her. But the entire driving force of all of that sequence of the book is the fact that she still wants to go save them. And if she believes that they can't lie, then whatever he's telling her is the truth. And yet somehow this conversation is regurgitated again, just slightly differently, and then she seems to accept it. The whole painting sequence with Feyre doesn't make sense for me. It's so boring, and like she paints like her cottage, and Tamlin loves it, and it's like I don't care. And there's random points where she's like, oh, I'd never paint his face, never. And I don't get the painting part, because it doesn't seem like her character actually likes painting. It was just like a random hobby we had to throw in there to add some couple extra chapters. It's totally out of whack. Another thing, I'm not a fan of how, I already said it, but every single chapter seems to start with Feyre waking up, having dinner, or eating. Every single chapter. And I'm so sick and tired of it. It's like the laziest thing I've ever seen. It's just every single chapter. When I awoke with a start, awoke in the middle of the night. Every single chapter, and I get it. But it feels like we could just kind of like cut a little bit of the part from the top of the chapter and it would be fine, right? Her getting up and going to investigate something doesn't require us to learn like, oh, she immediately woke in the night and then all this stuff, and then she wakes up in the morning and she has a bath, and not a fan of that. The romance is a huge part of this book that just rubbed me the wrong way, because it doesn't feel earned. Okay, and here's another thing. I haven't actually read the second book. I haven't read any of the books. This is the only one that I've read. I'm going to just assume here, because at the very end, when Rysland is talking to her, he seems to have this moment where he's like, where his eyes widen and he's like startled, and then boom, he disappears. And being the very thoughtful reader that I am, I remembered, okay, in the very kind of like the very beginning, they discussed that to fairies, marriage is second to mating. And when you mate with someone, which is implied to be like this stronger bond, right? They have this like bond. It supersedes marriage. My immediate thought with Rysland having this reaction to seeing Fay Ray now that she's a fairy is he is like bonded with her, and boom, I would assume in the next book she gets with him because he is dark, mysterious, he brutally killed people, and Tamlin just doesn't have a lot of personality to him. He really is just like this attractive guy that's buff and has claws and gets really angry sometimes and just like can't seem to control his temper, and he seems a little bit controlling because anytime she like tries to go somewhere, he's like, oh, where are you going? Hey, like you said I could go anywhere, and he's like, yeah, but you can't go anywhere without telling me. And it's like, okay, it's a little weird, but I don't like that. I don't like this relationship in this book. Tamlin and Fay Ray don't really work, and I don't think they worked because the author didn't really let them work. The whole appeal to these two characters is the fact that they are attractive, which again is a driving force of the story. If Fay Ray was not attractive, this book wouldn't have happened. If Fay Ray wasn't attractive, if Tamlin wasn't some super hot, just like ripped freaking overlord with like tan gold skin, this wouldn't have happened. This is not gonna happen. So, and I know it's like, okay, we're a romantasy book, we have to kind of consider this. I get it. I just don't like it. There was this point in the book that kind of annoyed me because I noticed this word that stood out that bothered me, and it's used back to back in a very weird way. And this kind of reminds me of like an author like finding a new word and then they just throw it in back to back, because I swear I could be wrong, but I've only seen this word twice in this book, I think, because each time it made me go like, what? Rysland didn't dawn to acknowledge any of them. His shoulders still loose, his footsteps unhurried. And then on the exact next page, it says, I didn't dan to make a response. I might be pronouncing that word wrong, but that's the only two parts where that word appears, and it appears in this paragraph and then the next page, and that's it. And it's like so weird to me that happened. Oh, there's this frequent use of his throat bobbing. Like, she describes his throat bobbing, and I don't know what that means. I don't know what throat bobbing means. It's said multiple times throughout the book, and I still don't know what throat bobbing means. I don't know what throat bobbing means. I don't know what throat bobbing means. I thought it was laughing at first because like your Adam's apple or whatever bobs, but why would your throat bobs anytime you talk technically, right? I don't get that one. Oh my god. This part. I'm sure it happened before. I think it happens one more time. She says this, and this line in this book made me like genuinely wonder what the fuck she meant when she was writing this. Like, my bowels turned watery. I couldn't help it. When you say your bowels turned watery, what do you mean? Because when the only time I can even associate my bowels turning watery is like after having Taco Bell at 2 a.m. And I almost immediately associate it with diarrhea. So did Fay Ray just shit herself, like watery diarrhea? Because that's what I get out of that. And I don't know what we're trying to like express here, that like she's nervous or scared or like she might shit herself, but her bowels turning watery, I don't know what the fuck that means. And then it happens again right here. My own bowels turned watery with fear and shame as he wet himself. Did she shit herself again? I'm just so confused. There's like so many points in this book where like the writing confuses the absolute crap out of me. My bowels literally turned watery while reading this. Okay, so aside from the whole story pretty much starting with her waking up, her going dinner, I for one was monumentally disappointed with the sex scenes, because everybody implied it was going to be like super raunchy, like just the most like stuff I've ever seen. And it's like, yeah, it's written for women, and it's got more of like an emotional thing to it. I've read romance before, and I've read romance for women, and usually it's pretty explicit, but I guess this was trying to appeal to a very large audience. And there's like 2 sex scenes in the entire book, and I would be I would be very, I wouldn't even call these sex scenes. They're more just like vanilla porno, right? Like there's nothing like entering. We're not, I wanted to know how much schlong Tamlin was packing. That was my concern. And at the end of this, I still have no idea. So, I mean, I didn't even know how much Isaac is packing. So, like, as a reader, I have questions. The whole plot revolves around them sending one of their friends to die and then getting angry when they die, and then her not telling him that she loves him. It's a literal plot device. And for some reason, he sends her away, even though this is his only opportunity to get this and to save his people. We're talking about the greater good, okay? And Feyre kills innocent fairies for him, but he won't let her stay for 2 more days so that they could figure out, or so that he could goad her into just saying that she loves him. Like, how hard is that? It seems like Feyre was really in love with the guy, but she can't say the words, really? She can't say the words? She can't say I love you to him? That is the major plot point, is that she can't say I love you, because if she had said it, the whole book would have ended. I would say as a fantasy book, this is not good at all. As a romance book, it's okay. But just as an overall like romantasy book, this being the bar is like, it's pretty low. Just personally. The writing is okay. I don't mind the writing. It's the story that's lacking. It's like I said in the beginning, there's good storytellers, and then there's good authors. And good authors that are good storytellers are usually pretty rare, because you can write an amazing, fantastic story that's like pretty much devoid of any error whatsoever, and the story itself can be pretty shit. And this is kind of like an example of that. The story is bad. Feyre is irredeemable and unlikable. And their romance is forced and highly contingent on the fact that they are both extremely attractive, which is lazy. All in all, I'd probably give it maybe like if I was being super nice, like a 5 out of 10. Like a 5 out of 10. Because it's not badly written. It's a bad story. It's a bad book.